First, we put some of this blue liquid inside this clear holder, just until it gets part of the way up on those holes there. Okay. Then this plastic screw goes in the back of the clear holder. And we'll take some of this tungsten wire. It looks like one of the ends got frayed. So without touching this wire, that's really tiny that you can't really see unless it's in the light. Technically you can't see it at all, but in reality you can see the reflection of the light off of it. So we'll take this, only touch it with this metal tool. Grab the free end. Before we do that though, we're going to set this metal circle down here. Have the circle, the hole pointing forward. Lay this wire over the top of the circle. The wire should be laid right across the center of those two holes that are in the middle. With some of the extra hanging down here. And I'll take a piece of tape here. Tape the circle down to the holder so that it doesn't spin. And then I will tape the side that's closest to the spool of the tape, of the wire, like that. Make sure that this is still laid across there, not tight, but where it doesn't have any wiggles in it. And tape the other side of it. There we go. Okay, now the end of the wire that's going to be free needs to have a piece of tape on it so that it won't get lost. So we'll take this piece of tape, just make a little Y shape out of it, like that, and just carefully set it on top of that wire and close it. Alright, and that just keeps track of that free end, and then we can cut it right between the two and get it out of our way. Okay, and then I can also cut off this free end over here and just make sure that it goes into the trash so that we won't have that tiny little wire floating around. Alright, next I'll plug this wire into the front here. Just make sure this tape is down so it won't spin or come up. Then, in order to get the blue liquid on the wire, we just spin the screw that's at the top until it just barely touches the wire, but the wire doesn't want to go down inside of it. So we'll take a piece of wire and touch right next to the bubble that's on top without actually touching the wire, if at all possible. There we go. And whenever the wire is inside the bubble, you should be able to see it. You should be able to see the wire pop down inside of there instead of sitting on top. Oh, how do I do it again? There we go, it's down inside of the bubble. And then these bubbles need to be pretty big. Sometimes they go away because there's air bubbles on the back side of it. And you just have to keep redoing it. Those bubbles, you want them to be as big as they can be without the liquid spilling out. And if it starts to spill out, just back off a little bit, like we have done there. And that looks good to me. Okay, so now I'm gonna unplug this wire from here and turn on the power supply. Make sure the current and the voltage are all the way down before turning it on. And then we're gonna take the voltage and turn it up to about 0.3. I do this before plugging it in because if it goes too high, there will be too much copper that gets on the wire, and we don't want that. So I'll plug that in, and we want this number over here to be about 0.8. I'm starting a timer on my phone right now for 2 minutes. We want it to be about 0.8, but if it goes up to about 1.2 or down to 0.7, that's okay. So I started a timer on my phone, and we'll just assume we lost about 15 seconds. Now it's been 2 minutes, so we'll turn the voltage all the way down and pull the bubble down slowly so that it won't pull on those wires too hard. Alright, this can be unplugged very carefully, and this back piece of tape can be removed. So there is our wire with copper on it. Okay, it has to have that copper on there so that the solder has something to stick to. This is the reason we do that part of the process. So now we'll come over here to the microscope and I'll place this in the right spot. Okay, so we'll take one of our hot wires here. We have T5 for today, just because that's one that was already broken. And basically the first thing is taking this stone and grinding off the tips. And that'll get rid of any wire that's left over and solder from the last time. And then I'll just clean it off with one of these wipes to get off the rest of the shavings that were left over after the stone. To put this in the holder, you just push this plate down, and there's a little rubber holder down in there. Just push that down inside of it. It's easy if the prongs are where one is in the front and one is in the back. That can pop back up. Now this over here controls the height of the table, so we'll want to bring the table up most of the way. So now I'm going to have to use the soldering iron, and it needs to be set to 750 degrees, which that's what it's at right now. Has this super thin tip on it. And now that the soldering iron is up to heat, which you'll know whenever it's blinking like that, we're going to take and tin the tip of the soldering iron. This is flux right here, so just dip the tip of this wire in there and then use it to clean off this tip. And then I'm going to get just a tiny drop of solder on there. Just hanging from the tip of it. It's really small. And I'm going to take and put that on top of each of these probes. Alright, and what it should look like is just a clean little bubble on top of there. It should just be rounded and very shiny, and just only on the very tip tops of those. If it's not working, you can put flux on top of the tops of these, and then when you put the bubble on there, just quickly tap each one. And then we're going to take this circle with the wire that has the copper on it, move the table up before getting the wire close to the probe so that it doesn't run into it. And then using the microscope, put the wire over the top of the probe, and then use this dial over here to bring the table up. This is the table. Bring the table up so that the probe meets the wire. Actually, we're taking the table down right now. Oh, and before we're going to want to get it right on top of there, we do want to put a little bit more flux on top of those probes so that the solder melt. Now, put this over the top of them, bring the table the rest of the way down until it just touches those two probes. There we go. Well, the wire should be sitting just on top of those probes where the part with copper on it is centered. And then only tungsten wire should be between the probes, if you can see that in the video here. Wire should be up against the probes, but it shouldn't be too tight on there, is that there shouldn't be any tension on it, but you also don't want it drooping. And this one had a little bit of extra slack in it, so the probe is actually a little bit above the top of the circle, but ideally you wouldn't want any of that slack in there whenever you're putting the copper on the wire. Alright, now make sure there's some flux on this wire, touch it with a soldering iron just until we get that little bubble again. And I'm going to touch the sides of these two probes, but not the top, and definitely not the wire. And there we go. The left one ended up looking good, but the right one is kind of struggling there. So I'm going to take and run the soldering iron up the side of the probe and kind of bring some of the solder up to the top of it, because it kind of runs down the side is what happens. It brings it to the top, and then you'll know if it's good if the whole wire is down inside of the solder and the solder is shiny on the top. A nice little bubble there. So this is what you want it to look like, with those nice shiny bubbles and the entire wire inside of them. So next, what you do is cut the wire where it's between the probe and the circle, but without pulling on the wire, which is actually kind of hard to do sometimes. Alright, cut it on both sides. Now we could remove the circle and use this tool to move that remaining wire up and down until it breaks off. I want it to break off right up next to the probe. That's why you bend it back and forth to make it break off instead of cutting it. There we go. Flip on the side. Okay, now you can look through the microscope. Okay, so this is what it should look like once the ends are broken off. And then you can see that wire shouldn't have any bowing, that tungsten wire that's in between, and you see that there's no copper showing between the probes. So that should be what it looks like. We'll just turn the iron off. That shouldn't stay on unless you're using it. Take this and we'll go wash it. Okay, so we're gonna stick this probe down in the water before we turn it on. The probe is gonna stay in this water bath for 1 minute, and the water that's in here is distilled water. The machine is ultrasonic cleaner. 1 minute now, so I'm going to turn the cleaner off first and then take the probe out. And there's usually a little bubble right between the two sides of the probe, but we're not going to try to pop that. So after it's cleaned, we stick it back into the microscope holder and look through it to make sure that it hasn't broke. And if there's that bubble on it still, basically what I'm going to do is take this tool here and use it to pop that bubble. I just move it down between the two probes and the bubble has popped. So there we go. This is a finished hot wire. So to dispose of this liquid, we pour as much as we can in this container right here. And then we'll use wipes to wipe down what we can. And get as much as we can out of here. And off of this screw. Put this in this little baggie. And then those can be disposed of properly.